Okay, and welcome to our similarity statements review. Now we're going to start out with a fairly easy example here. And let's say this. Let's say that quadrilateral, and sometimes we don't need to draw the shapes or write quad. We can just say that quadrilateral A, B, C, D, we're going to say it is similar to A, and then following the same order, A, F, G, E. Okay, so from this, we can derive quite a few things. So we could say, you know what? We could say that DC. Let's see. I noticed that DC. That's my last two letters, even though I said it backwards. Well, my last two letters here is GE. We could say that DC is similar to GE. Or another thing that we could say is we could say that they have a corresponding ratio. So we could also do something like this. We could say that let's see. We could say that DC, how do you find a corresponding ratio? Well, you're essentially finding the scale factor. You do that by dividing. We could say DC divided by EG, okay? So remember that since these things are similar, we divide them to find their scale factor. Fraction bars mean division. We can actually say that this must be congruent to, well, if we have the same ratio over here. Check it out. We could say AB is similar. We could say that AB is similar to AF, that whole thing right there. Well, if we do AB divided by AF, it must have the exact same ratio as DC divided by EG. So this is considered to be a true similarity statement. Now, I want you to notice something else. DC, it's the smaller shape. That's actually going to be considered a part of the bigger shape, which will be considered the whole. And here you can see, well, wait a second, AB is also a part, and AF is also a whole. So we have part divided by whole is congruent to part divided by whole. We're going to say, hey, that is a true statement. Now, I want to give y'all an example of a false statement. So let's say, what would be a false statement? I could say something like this. I could say AB, so that's our part right here, that's our part, over, let's do this other part, BF. I could say that this ratio is also congruent to the ratio of, let's use purple here, of CD over EG. Now, how could I tell that that's a false statement? Well, what I want y'all to do is I want y'all to get in the habit of labeling parts and wholes. So I know that AB is a part. I know that BF is a part. And over here, I know that CD is a part, but we know that EG is considered the whole. So is it a false statement to say that part divided by part is congruent to part divided by whole? Yeah, absolutely. So here are your examples of true and false similarity statements. Let's move on to a slightly more difficult example. Okay, here we have example 2, and let's just go ahead and write out let's come up with two true statements. Okay, let's come up with two true statements. Oh, and by the way, what do I know here? I know that there's this little arrow right there, and that little arrow right there. There's also two arrows right there. Well, this is telling me that DE is parallel to BC. And remember, what is so important about that? That's telling us that this angle is corresponding to that angle, and that angle is corresponding to that angle. And by the angle-angle similarity statement, which I'm going to now abbreviate as the angle-angle SIMPOS, okay, the angle-angle SIMPOS, or the angle-angle similarity postulate, we now know that our large triangle, the whole thing, ABC, must be similar to triangle ADE. And this is where we're going to contrive all of our statements. So I told y'all we'll do two true statements. Okay, statement number 1. Let's take a look at AD. AD over, and let's go ahead and do BD. And I'll try and use different colors for all of these. And let's say this. Is this congruent to, well, what do you think it would be congruent to? Hopefully you would say that AD is corresponding to AE in some way, and of course BD was corresponding in some way to EC. It's actually kind of incorrect the way I said that. But here's what we would say this. We have AD AD over BD is congruent to AE over EC. Now, how are you going to tell if that's true? Well, using this nice orange color, I notice AD is a part, I notice BD is a part, I notice AE is a part, and I notice EC is a part. Yeah, that is going to be a true statement. Let's come up with a second true statement. Second true statement. One that's a little bit trickier, and I notice students struggle with this all the time. Going back to this purple, let's talk about AD. We know AD is a part, and then we're going to do this over, let's do the whole side, AB. Okay? And let's say that that is congruent to, now I'll use this nice green color again. Let's talk about DE. Now here's where students really struggle. When we're talking about this base right here, is this a part or a whole? And when you look at it as the small triangle, you're going to be like, well, that looks like a whole side to me. But students often fail to realize that this is technically a part of this line right here. So that is technically a part. And then, of course, we're going to divide this by our final side, our final corresponding side, BC. Now I'm using this terminology correctly. And let's see, is this a true or false statement? Well, I know that AD is a part. Remember, we just said that DE is a part. I know that AB is a whole, and I know that BC is another whole. And yeah, that's going to be another true statement. Now, what would be an incorrect statement? Let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and write out a false statement. Would be an example of a false statement. And this will be kind of our third one right here. And our last example. Let's say I took AE. I know AE is a part. And let's say I divided that by EC. Okay, that's another part. Part divided by part is congruent to, and right here, let's say I had said, I think DE is a part, and I think BC is also a part. Okay, well, check it out. We know DE is in fact a part, but BC is unfortunately a whole, and so part over part cannot be congruent to part over whole. And so that's an example of a false statement. All right, guys, if you'll write out these answer choices and you'll literally write it out as parts and wholes, this becomes the easiest thing in the world. All right, I'll see y'all in our next video.